Hi friends, this is a recap of the movie The Last Paradiso. On an Italian farm in the olive fields, Bianca Schettino, daughter of the local mayor, is having fun with farmer Ciccio Paradiso. Their secret affair becomes known to Bianca's sister, Maria. After their time together, Ciccio kisses Bianca and reminds her that they will meet later at another place. As for Maria, she is forced to keep quiet about all of these events. There is a good reason why Maria must keep quiet, and part of it is that Ciccio already has a wife named Lucia and a son. While his mother, Ninetta, is making bread for dinner, she asks Lucia where Ciccio is, but Lucia doesn't say anything. Later, Bianca's father, Cumpa Schettino, and her brother Cosimo watch the harvesters work on his olive farm. When his daughters bring him some food, Cumpa tells the harvesters to take a break, and he sends a beautiful woman to the barn so she can rest too. When Ciccio returns home, he is confronted by his other mistress, who resents him for spending more time with the mayor's daughter than with her. In turn, Ciccio nonchalantly reassures her before leaving. Ciccio is eating when he asks Ninetta what she thinks of their house. Ciccio openly expresses his displeasure and even expresses his desire to leave. He then brings up his brother who lives abroad and the fact that he doesn't write to them, but his mother assures him that they are always in his brother's thoughts. As for the mayor of Cumpa, he forcibly imposes himself on the woman he has sent to his barn, while Maria hears the poor woman's screams. That same evening, Ciccio finds his friend Vincenzo in a bar, and together they watch Don Luigi buy the olives he has harvested from a farmer for a small sum of money. Unfortunately, the farmer is forced to accept his disgustingly low offer due to his financial difficulties, and he goes home having failed. Just as another farmer approaches to exchange his harvest for Don Luigi's meager offer, Ciccio interrupts them and starts an argument. He humiliates Don Luigi by declaring that he will buy all the farmer's crops for a decent price, while emphasizing that he has had enough of strangers sucking money out of them. In response to Ciccio's protests, Don Luigi smirks and walks away, leaving Ciccio to spend the night with the peasants. When Ciccio returns home for breakfast, he has a serious discussion with his father about corruption among the landowners. However, his father angrily tells him to mind his own business, while Lucia intervenes to express how furious she is that Ciccio did not come home last night. Ciccio simply leaves the table, and his wife goes on a tirade about his infidelity. Later, he meets Bianca on their secret date. With romantic French music playing from a gramophone, Ciccio tells her how he wants to go far, far away with her. They kiss passionately under a large olive tree and dance slowly to the music. Cumpa and the brigadier listen to Don Luigi's complaints about Ciccio. He feeds the mayor's ego by reminding him that he controls most of the local properties, which makes him in charge. Cumpa then decisively tells Don Luigi that he will see to it that the peasants revolt. After Don Luigi's departure, Cumpa asks the brigadier to bring some peasants while he takes care of Ciccio. At night, Ciccio is summoned, and his buddies raise a ruckus outside Cumpa's house. He assures them that he will deal with it, and with these words enters the estate while his companions wait for him outside. Once inside, Cumpa asks Bianca to get him a drink. He then asks if Ciccio knows his daughter, and Bianca instinctively denies knowing her. The mayor goes on to talk about his relationship with Ciccio's family, explaining that Cenz was like a brother to him. Cumpa even knows Ciccio's grandfather, who moved abroad to live with a much younger woman. He then cuts to the chase and recounts how Ciccio humiliated Don Luigi. Not to be appeased, he defiantly replies that the Don gained his wealth by buying their goods cheap and earning 3 times as much as the peasants who devoted the crops to their blood, sweat, and tears. Ciccio goes on to say that, like his father, he will never give in and will wage war against anyone who gets in his way. He concludes his speech by adding that they, the peasants, work the land with hoes, so they will pay for it. Ciccio's remarks are met with laughter by Cumpa, and he praises him for his confidence, shaking his hand. As Cosimo leads Ciccio outside, Cumpa watches silently as he and his friends leave. Later that night, 2 peasants pretend to hitchhike to Don Luigi's car, but beat him to a pulp and leave him unconscious in the street. Morning comes, and the beaten Don Luigi files a complaint with the police. At night, Ciccio sneaks into Bianca's room to wake her up. They go around the estate in silence until they come to Cumpa's barn. There, Ciccio confesses his love to her, stroking her face. Bianca asks if he loves Lucia, and though Ciccio claims he does, he says that Bianca is different. She is something non-existent. They turn a haystack into their love nest and let their hormone-overloaded bodies drift in bliss all night. The next day, Bianca tells Maria about her wonderful night with Ciccio and confesses that she left him sleeping in the barn. But when Cumpa instructs Cosimo to take care of the horses, Maria volunteers to accompany him to cover Ciccio and her sister. She manages to prevent her brother from finding Ciccio and eventually allows him to leave. Later, Cumpa talks to one of Ciccio's acquaintances about what happened to Don Luigi. He pays him some money to settle the matter. When Ciccio and Lucia are in church, they have a serious conversation in which Lucia accuses him of infidelity. He tries to comfort her and tells her that he loves her, but they want different things. Sometime later, he meets Bianca, who informs him that her father may have already found out about their relationship. Ciccio comforts her, saying that he can't wait to see her in a beautiful dress. He hands Bianca a letter and asks her to read it. Ciccio plans to give it to her father tomorrow so they can go visit his brother abroad and continue their affair. Later, Cosimo confirms his father's suspicions by telling him that Bianca has been seeing Ciccio, which infuriates him. He immediately asks Maria about her sister's whereabouts, and she immediately lies. When Bianca appears, Cumpa reprimands both daughters, frustrated that he has raised a liar and a tramp. But Bianca is not deterred by her father's harsh words and undresses in front of him. She boldly asks him why he doesn't look like he enjoys the sight, for she knows for a fact that he enjoys forcing 15-year-olds to undress in the barn. Cumpa turns away from his naked daughter, leaving Maria to cover Bianca's body and lead her away. Later that night, Ciccio strokes his sleeping wife's hair and looks at his son. Afterward, he sits on the landing of his house, pondering a prepared letter. The next day, Ciccio meets Cumpa alone at the farm to give him the letter. Cumpa says it will take him a day to finish reading it, after which he takes Ciccio with him to tour his property. Boasting about how rich his land is despite the heat, the mayor begins digging in the ground with a shovel and invites Ciccio to inspect the soil. Ciccio follows his example, but suddenly Cumpa hits him on the head several times, whereupon he is castrated. Soon the townspeople and Ciccio's family find his body displayed in the town square. Everyone mourns the loss of the brave man who fought for them. As Cenc removes his son's bloody body, he weeps and mourns his death, which is all he can do. Elsewhere, a mustachioed factory worker named Antonio is summoned by his manager to inform him of his brother's death. Antonio is Ciccio's twin brother, and their faces look alike. Meanwhile, the police arrest the farmers associated with Ciccio, leaving their families only to watch as they are taken away. A few days later, Antonio arrives in his hometown. He immediately comforts his mother and sister Mariella, who tells him about how Cumpa killed Ciccio and how they want to leave town. Antonio hugs Lucia, and while the family prepares for the funeral service, Antonio spends a moment alone looking at his brother's body. Bianca tries to break away from the family to watch Ciccio being carried to his final resting place, but Cosimo tries to stop her. However, Bianca threatens to kill him, and he leaves her. While the town mourns Ciccio's death, Bianca stands by, grieving and unable to contact her lover. The next day, Antonio arrives in town and goes to the police station. He asks about his brother's death, but since the foreman cannot give him the information he needs, Antonio simply leaves. Outside, a man snaps at Antonio, stating that his brother is in jail because of Ciccio. Fortunately, Vincenzo is there and chases the man away. Vincenzo then tells Antonio about his brother's life, explaining that Ciccio slept with many women in his lifetime and caused riots. At Paradiso's house, Antonio witnesses Mariella yelling at Cenc for not confronting the man who killed his own son. However, Cenc calmly replies that Ciccio made a mistake and paid for it. Ninetta and Mariella remain depressed, and Cenc tells Antonio that Ciccio should have become a criminal to confront evil, but since he didn't, he paid with his life. Antonio informs his father that he is leaving and instructs him to forget about everyone and everything. Before leaving, Antonio visits the Schettino family to see Cumpa. Cosimo sees him from afar and locks Bianca in her room. The men of the Schettino family come face to face with Antonio, insult him and chase him away, as the Paradiso family is not welcome in their territory. Antonio admits that he knows that Cumpa killed his brother, but the mayor replies that it is for the best and that Ciccio deserved to die. Antonio calmly warns Cumpa that his greed will be his undoing and that there is a law governing everything. But Cumpa declares that he has the law in the palm of his hand and banishes Antonio lest he become a second victim. It is later revealed that before leaving Schettino's house, Antonio ambushed Cumpa in his stable, where both the mayor and Cosimo were killed as a result. Their bloody bodies are put on public display in the center of town, and Maria screams in horror upon discovering them. The townspeople refuse to sympathize with Cumpa, remembering how much evil he has done, while Ciccio's death was mourned by the whole town. Bianca, devoid of support, asks Don Luigi to help with her father's farming business. But the Don is more fascinated by her looks than her business. When he tries to possess Bianca, she takes a pitchfork and stabs him in the leg, leaving him to suffer. Meanwhile, Antonio is working abroad again, but his thoughts keep returning to the past. One of his co-workers injures his arm, and Antonio stares at the blood with bewilderment, remembering the tragedy at home. Bianca continues to work on the farm, but when she sees a special tree, she begins to remember Ciccio. It was under this tree that they first met. She then went to him for help after being bitten by a snake, and he told her to close her eyes, promising to suck out the poison, but instead he kissed her and then ran away. Antonio, despite the support of his lover, feels lost. Her father, who is also his boss, advises him to take a break, but Antonio refuses. At night, he sends a letter to Bianca, but she receives it and does not read it, but hides it in her desk drawer. The next day, Antonio walks into a bar, reflecting on his decision. He leaves his beloved a farewell letter in which he informs her that he is returning to his roots. She cries as she reads it. Antonio arrives home unexpectedly, much to the surprise of his mother. Later, he goes to Schettino's house and asks Maria about Bianca. Maria allows him to enter the estate and wait for her sister. Antonio, upon leaving Schettino's house after seeing a picture of Bianca and Maria's deceased mother, is shocked by his discovery. He goes straight to his father, Cenz, who works on the farm. Antonio questions his father about the photograph, which is remarkably similar to one he saw in Cenz's wallet years ago. Finally, Cenz dares to reveal the dark truth about his family and the Schettino family. He confesses that Maria is his illegitimate daughter from his affair with Bianca and Maria's mother, the matriarch Schettino. In tears, Cenz reveals that Ninetta, his wife, knew about the affair but chose to keep the secret for the sake of the family. However, Bianca and Maria's mother could not bear the shame and committed suicide. Meanwhile, Bianca finally decides to read Antonio's letter. At this time, Antonio himself, having returned home, shaves off his mustache, making it so that his mother, watching this, cannot hold back her tears. It is as if he is turning into his dead brother Ciccio. Later, Bianca meets Antonio in town and is surprised to notice how much he now resembles Ciccio. She asks him about the letter he wrote her, and Antonio calmly approaches her, whispering in her ear that he wants to marry her right now. He asks Bianca to close her eyes, and she obediently complies with his request. When she opens her eyes again, she is surrounded by a rain of flower petals, and she is wearing the dress Ciccio promised her for her wedding. The townspeople gather around them, and Antonio, taking Bianca by the hand, leads her to the church, where they are accompanied by the Paradiso family. Antonio now assumes the role of his dead brother. He becomes the voice of hope for the townspeople and Bianca's lover, continuing the life that Ciccio did not have time to complete.